What's going on, everyone? Happy Monday. Hope you all had a fantastic weekend. We're going to do another best ball mania draft. Let's do it. We got the 4 spot today. Finally, not a 2 spot draft, which is basically what every draft has seemingly been on these live streams over the last couple weeks. So we're in the 4 spot. Probably looking at Jamar Chase. It's been interesting to see that Amon-Ra St. Brown's jumped Justin Jefferson. I don't think I officially realized that with the Sam Darnold news. I don't really see any difference with Justin Jefferson with and without Sam Darnold. We have a lot of evidence saying that the rookie quarterbacks are actually bad for wide receivers. We'll go Chase and just hope that he plays. Irvin. LFGGGG. What's going on, man? Hope you're doing well. Hope everyone had a fantastic weekend. I had a great one. Had a buddy in town. Lots of fun. Got to see Kamani Vidal look pretty good. Made me feel good about my take on becoming a best ball bro last week. Rui, what's going on, man? Get chased and get chased. Any hesitancy in drafting Tyreek at number 1 with the potential best wide receiver running back remaining at the 2-3 turn being Waddle and Achane? In a best ball environment, no. In a season long environment, a little bit more. I wouldn't want all 3 in just a 12-team league. 2 of them is fine. 3's a lot. Drew says, JJ, thanks for all the great content. I'm curious if there are any players in the top 4 or 5 rounds where you have 0 shares. In best ball, trying to think, not 0. You know, if I'm looking down ADP, I wouldn't say 0 for anyone. But there are guys that I'm definitely underweight on. Underweight on like a Pickens. Was scared off a little bit by the potential of them doing something and adding something, but also what's that passing volume going to look like there? There's definitely some stuff to like about Pickens, but I'm underweight on Pickens. I'm underweight on Evans and Devontae, more so Devontae than Evans. Underweight on some of the running backs just naturally because I'm going with other positions, which might bite me. Doesn't feel great, but it's just like, I like some of the elite tight ends and I like the wide receivers. And so I just naturally am underweight on some of the running backs early. Any worry for Neighbors after this weekend, or is that kind of a quarterback play expected? Is that kind of quarterback play expected in his projection? I don't have that much worry because the volume was there. I mean, he saw pretty crazy target share on routes run. I'm not overly concerned. I think that that's always been a concern. I actually answered that in more detail on my mailbag last week. I don't think anything really changed from that mailbag that dropped last Friday. What's going on, Albert? What percentage of your best ball portfolio are 2 quarterback builds versus 3 quarterback? Probably say more 2. I'd probably say like 80-85% are 2. And then the rest are 3. I don't know for sure though. All right. Drake London's been falling a lot. It's been weird. I mean, I'm going to take Olave. I'm still in on Olave. Others don't seem to be as much. But I'm pretty into the idea of Clint Kubiak being there. Rich Rebar had a great stat on my podcast last week talking about how on in motion, on plays where you had motion, Chris Olave had the best yards per route run rate in football. And I looked it up. I now have access to like the next gen stat stuff because they just came out with a really cool like suite for consumers. And I looked it up too, and he's there. He's right there based on their numbers as well. And they're going to run a lot more motion. Last year, New Orleans was last in the league in play action passing. Like, it was just the least creative offense imaginable. Now you get Clint Kubiak coming from San Francisco, has that mindset, that sort of Shanahan mindset, getting guys in motion, hopefully a more efficient run game. I'm bullish. I don't have that much Kyron Williams either. I mean, I have probably 3 to 4%. So that scares me a little bit. I might force it a little bit here if he is on the board. But yeah, that's been a little bit scary too. I have a lot of Blake Corum. I'd rather that gap be shrunk a little bit. But my reasoning for Kyron was laid out in the late round draft guide, and I've talked about it on the show and stuff and on here. But he's just not. I think that he'll be fine. Like he's fine, and I probably should be a little bit more heavy in a best ball environment. But yeah, there's some legitimate fear based on market trends and such. Let's just get him here though to get my portfolio up a little bit past ADP. No worries about the New Orleans line and Carr just dumping it off all year long. No, look, there's worries, guys. I mean, like if there weren't that's the thing. Like whenever I give you the bull case, the reason I don't have him as a top 5 wide receiver is because of that stuff. If he was in a perfect environment, I'd love Chris Olave because he's really, really good. But yeah, there's definitely concern about New Orleans offensive line. What's going on, Kevin? Hey, Christian, how far do you suggest we bump up running backs in your ranks for a 2 wide receiver league versus a 3 wide receiver league? I don't know the answer to how far because a lot of the running backs early on are still ranked basically at ADP. But it's more so, it's the stuff that I talk about in the draft guide. It's the stuff that I talk about all the time where you got to read your room and understand where guys are just generally going. Like, I think that you should be drafting running backs based on ADP and home league ADP and all that kind of stuff. The majority of running backs are overrated and overinflated. It stops around that like Rachaad White, Joe Mixon, Josh Jacobs, Kenneth Walker, Alvin Kamara tier. When you get into Ramondre Stevenson and Zamir White and David Montgomery, those players are inflated in ADP on multiple platforms. Not necessarily underdog, but you're going to get them not that far off from some of the guys in that other tier that I was just talking about. And I understand that you have a 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, whatever league. But like my rankings are set up the way they are for a reason. So it's hard to answer that like straight up. I would say that you can still, you have to read your draft room. Like this is why I don't like rankings in general, because I feel like rankings I know they don't tell the entire story at all. It's why, I write as much as I write about the game theory stuff, because I want you to have the tools to be able to react and be reactive to what's going on in your individual draft. It's more important to be reactive than to just draft off of those rankings. What's the lowest tier wide receiver you're willing to take as wide receiver 1? Again, that's another, hang on, let me make a pick here. Oh, look, I might get an little ETN action here. Maybe we go heavier running back. I don't know. I kind of want Trey McBride with Kyron. Let's go Trey McBride. Pair him with Kyron for week 17. This is also a range where you can get Kyler in the 7th. What's the lowest tier wide receiver you're willing to take as a wide receiver 1? That's to me, and I answered this before on with in terms of running back 1 is like what a hero running back is, or like what the worst hero running back would be, or anchor running back. The answer is if you go running back, you can go running back early in your draft. I don't have a name or like a tier break where that's got to be your wide receiver 1. What you need to do is, if you don't take wide receivers early, where those guys have high ceilings and they have good hit rates, you just need more wide receivers. It's no different than in a best ball environment here, where if we go running back early, we're only taking 4 running backs potentially throughout our entire draft, because we don't need more running backs. We need more wide receivers. We need more darts to throw at that position. And so when you say, who's the worst wide receiver 1? The answer is your worst wide receiver 1 could hypothetically be Zay Flowers, as long as you just keep going wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver over and over and over again for your next like 8 picks, because then you're increasing your odds of getting a true wide receiver 1, right? That's the way our minds should be working with fantasy football. It's not just like, hey, here's how the draft board looks and how it's situated. How should we attack? It's based on sorry, I'm in the middle of this pick, so that didn't make any sense. It's not just simply looking at the draft board and saying like, here's where I need this guy to fit into this part. No, it's an art. It flows. It's more than that. All right. We're gonna look at wide receiver. Kind of want to get more Xavier Worthy, so we'll go with him. I think you can make an argument for a lot of these guys. Didn't want to go Mahomes because I wouldn't be able to stack him. And then Jacobs, I already have Kyron. I don't need to force it necessarily. I already had the tight end. So it's really Christian Kirk, Calvin Ridley, or Worthy, and I'd rather get Worthy at this point. Hopefully that answer made sense though. Thoughts on Brendan Rice? He didn't have that great of a production profile in college. Wasn't that amazing of a prospect. I think that his like a decent outcome for him, like a higher end outcome for him, is like a Michael Wilson. In so many BBM drafts lately, I'm noticing quarterbacks went way earlier. Many 3 to 4 quarterback teams as well, but harder to get stacks. Yeah, I've noticed that too. We kind of saw that coming. We talked about it a little bit on Becoming a Best Ball Bro. I missed the light mode. I could use getting flashbanged on this Monday afternoon. Here you go. Look, ready? Light mode, baby. We're back to dark though. How much stock do you put into preseason snap counts? Been a little worrying for Tank Dell. Yeah, I think it is. I mean, look, I think Dell should be the wide receiver 3 ranking wise on that team. And I do think that their snap counts with the first team in particular does matter, but they're going to run a lot of 11 personnel. Remember too, that when teams are not in 11 personnel, they're not necessarily going to just be throwing. Like 11 personnel, you're going to throw more than you would in like a 12 personnel, right? So, we're looking at like routes at the end of the day. And I would say that Nico and Stephon Diggs are going to run more routes than Tank Dell. And that's enough probably to say, rank Stephon Diggs over Tank Dell. But at the same time, Dell's probably going to be a little bit more efficient per touch and per target. And the difference in the delta in actual routes run here is not going to be like 10 to 15 per game. It's going to be like 5 per game. So I wouldn't be like overly concerned. Are you higher on Ridley since the Hopkins injury? I have been higher on Ridley, but I've also still been drafting Hopkins at his decreased cost. And it's a 32-year-old wide receiver who has a knee injury. It's a little bit frightening, right? I saw the BBM winning lineup last year was a 3-6-6-3 build and only had a small Packers stack, but had Kyron. You think basically hitting on that late draft league winner is ultimately a necessity. It's not a necessity per se, but yeah, you're going to increase your odds a lot if you hit on those guys. But I also wouldn't just look at like the winning team and say, this is how you win, right? It's no different than like looking at like Super Bowl winners and saying that this is how Super Bowl winner, like what happens with Super Bowl winners, because it's just one team. It's one outcome. All right, I think we need to push Kyler for the next round. Right here, maybe go Rachaad White. Maybe go wide out. Brian Thomas would be at the top of my list. It's a weird draft. Let's go Brian Thomas. Anytime I'm like in between two guys, I just end up going with the wide receiver. If I didn't have Kyron, I'd go Rachaad White here, but I already have the running back. Let's go with B. Thomas. I have a lot of he's my highest rostered BBM wide receiver. Do you recommend 3 quarterbacks in Superflex League, even if the third quarterback is a low tier starter like May? Yeah, that's fine. What's the best way to calculate opportunity cost when choosing between drafting a wide receiver and running back if the running backs are... That is a very difficult question to answer on a live stream. I don't know. I don't really know how I could answer that right now. What do you use to build your models and do your analysis? Yeah, I'm pretty heavy Excel. People will hate though. James Conner going a little early. He's been rising a lot though. So this next round, if Kyler falls, we can go Kyler. Or if Kyler's here. if we don't get Kyler, it's fine. We can look at Joe Burrow at 93 with Jamar Chase. Honestly, we could look at both if things fall the right way. Honestly, I don't know. Calculating opportunity cost is not necessary. I mean, it's you're looking at projections and you're looking at the spread of where a baseline player would go in terms of round taken. And you're looking at a projection hypothetically if you're trying to really calculate and find a particular number, right? So if like the tight end versus his baseline player, we'll go with Kyler. If the tight end that you're looking to draft versus his baseline player is 100 points better, and the running back that you're looking at is 50 points better, but the tight end goes 10 rounds later and the running back goes 3 rounds later, just divide by the number of rounds. That's one way of looking at opportunity. That's a really simple way of explaining it, but I guess that's how I would explain it. Um, if I were to answer a mailbag or something. I'm really liking Michael Wilson lately. Yeah, I've been drafting him all summer. My rankings like him more than consensus and have liked him more than consensus. I don't think he's like a stud, but in my year 2 model, he looked pretty similar to like a Dontavian Wicks. Has Najee moved up much since the Warren news? I haven't really seen. I've only from a live draft standpoint. I did one last night, or maybe I did 2 last night, and I don't think I saw a dramatic shift. But I think we might have been before the Warren news officially hit. I'll say this: Najee's one of my highest. I think he might be my highest rostered. There's Najee right there, so a little bit higher than usual. Najee's actually my highest rostered BBM running back. He's at like 20%. You guys have seen me take him a lot on these live streams. And I'm not saying that because of the injury. I mean, I'm going to share my exposures. I'm becoming a best ball bro next week, but this is not a like, hey, I drafted Najee. Look at me. I was right, because it's not the case at all. This is more of an example of this is why we draft from ambiguous backfields, because right now, if Jaylen Warren were to be out for the year, right? Like this is a good wake up call. Is really what I'm saying. If Jaylen Warren were to be out for the year, where would we be drafting Najee Harris? Probably in the Rashad White range. Probably around there. Maybe in the Kamara, whatever. Like we're inching towards that, sure. But in a regular home league, there's going to be a bigger delta and a more significant delta because running backs are going to go earlier, right? And so it's just a good wake up call. It's like, okay, Jaylen Warren, fortunately, not out an extended period of time, but man, we're now witnessing and experiencing what happens in these ambiguous backfields, because Najee Harris, without the injury, could still be valuable. He could still be an RB2. He could give you a decent number of spiked weeks and touchdowns, et cetera, et cetera. But now we know the upside of what happens, like how we feel when a guy like Jaylen Warren goes down. It's no different than like Tennessee or Cincinnati. It's why we attack these backfields, because even if they're not season-long injuries, even if you get 1 week out of them or 2 weeks out of them, and these random spiked weeks, that's huge. That's massive. But you're still getting a nice baseline from them, right? Najee would be around Jacobs and Cook. Yeah. I was trying to be a little conservative with it, but yes, like it would be his backfield. The difference with him and Jacobs and Cook is obviously, you're getting players who are splitting. All right, so Joe Burrow goes over here to the Higgins squad, so it makes me feel better about getting Kyler. This is just an example. Like these quarterbacks, we're going in the 9th. I mean, I got Burrow shares in the 10th this offseason. So we're definitely seeing, look at these quarterbacks, man. So now we're in the spot where we could go DeAndre Hopkins. I don't like Zamir White. Not going to draft Jaylen Warren right here. Could go Raheem Mostert. Don't have much correlation. I don't really with Hopkins either. Or no, I do. I have Brian Thomas. Let's go Hopkins. I mean, if he plays week 1, I think this is the spot to get him at his new ADP. We're going to be able to get a running back in the next round. Is there a guy you have a lot of early on that has now moved up a lot, making you really excited you were in? Yeah, I mean Chase Brown, I was drafting a good bit of. Brian Thomas, he's moving up a little bit again, or he's starting to. He moved down a lot, and then he's starting to move back up. I don't know. There's definitely guys. I feel like you remember the guys who fall more. It's easier to fall too. I like Jermaine Burton and stuff like that. Some of those late rounders that they're it's easier for them to fall, right? Because there's not that much boosting them up to begin with, aside from like the injury stuff. I drafted a lot of DeAndre Hopkins, so I got ruined a little bit by that injury. If Warren and Kenneth Walker were both out for the year tomorrow, who would you rather have, Najee or Charbonnet? It's a good question. Probably in the same tier. That's my answer. That's my cop-out answer. So, yeah, these running backs are falling, which is nice. Might go Chase Brown to pair him with... Oh, just kidding. I might go Tony Pollard. I'm just targeting the Titans backfield in general. Could have gone Mostert there, but I want to keep up with this Jacksonville, Tennessee stack. Again, this is an ambiguous backfield that we want to look at and target. Brian Thomas, my most roster wide receiver, 24%. Like one of my only, yeah, Sam. I don't think I have any 20% BBM wide receivers. I don't think I do like overall either. But yeah, Brian Thomas is my highest. I think he was like 18 or 19%. It's just the way it naturally worked. I'm not even like really trying to get flat exposures. It's just kind of how things go. I'm honestly like after doing all of these drafts, I'm like, I don't understand how people have 40% exposure to players, which I know that some people like say that's the game theory thing to do. My brain doesn't work that way, and I just can't do it. Like I don't know how you just draft the same guys over and over again and not have like the same general structure and general team over and over again. This feels like a Jaleel McLaughlin team. I have a ton of Jaleel, man. That was a good preseason outing for him, seeing that he's basically splitting work with Javonte, and then he saw a little goal line work too. Zamir White, he's falling. That was a good fade. I think I've drafted him in one BBM. I don't have that much Ramondre either, but I have more Ramondre than Zamir. It's been funny. Like I see some people like talk about Zamir White and the analysis with him. There he goes at the end of this ninth. And they like recognize that he's not going to see a lot of work through the air, right? And then they're like, but still, he's not a bad value at RB22 and season long. And I'm like, I mean, then he is a bad value. If you're recognizing that he won't catch that many passes, like that's the whole thesis. Like that's what we care about in fantasy football and at the running back position. Like, is he a bet of someone who can match ADP for sure? But there's nothing that's not going to win you a fantasy title. Is a guy just matching ADP. And I'm just saying that from the perspective of like, yeah, of course I could be wrong. Of course they use him as a workhorse, all of that. Just going by evidence. Are you concerned at all with Mostert getting way more run than Achane with Tua on the field this weekend? Not overly concerned. Achane was used a lot as a receiver too, in terms of just like looks through the air and the number of snaps that he played. But Mostert's going to be involved. I think like Jalen Wright is someone who could dig in more into Mostert, like in late games and as they close things out and positive game scripts and stuff. But then there's the upside of injury too. And Mostert's still an older running back who has not been able to stay healthy throughout his career, Man, it would suck if Tajay Spears was here in this next round. Because I don't see him really as any different than Tony Pollard. There we go. Thank you. All right. I'm going to wait on quarterback. I could go T-Law. Maybe we do that. Because the squad is pretty evened out right now. Maybe we go Trevor Lawrence if he's there after this pick. Because we have two running backs. We can get a running back next. Like, there's no running back I need to necessarily reach for here. I like Rico. Let's go T-Law. We're done at wide or we're done at quarterback then. We have Brian Thomas. We can look at Gabe Davis maybe in the next round. Might have to. Might have to force it a little bit with Gabe the Babe. But this way we're stacking that week 17 game pretty well. This is just like a well-rounded team. Feels weird getting Hopkins at ADP now. In terms of what? Are you ever taking Pollard and Spears or Chase and Moss stack and redraft, avoiding any kind of hedge, or is it just wasted draft capital at that point? I see it as wasted draft capital because you're never like the most likely outcome for a lot of these ambiguous backfields is that they are split, right? And so by doing that, you're kind of making the assumption that they won't be split. And that's the problem, right? Because then they won't hit their ceiling. You want them to hit their ceiling. So I generally don't do that. There's been some research from a best ball perspective by like a Justin Herzig and ETR. They've talked about this where there seems to be somewhat of an edge if you want to go that route and stack backfields because not a lot of other teams do that. That's different. I still don't feel very comfortable doing it in best ball, but that's just like a personal thing. There might be some noise to that kind of data and research, and they would be open to that too. But there's also, they've made note that it's a real thing. But to me, you're looking at ceiling outcomes. You're not looking at floor outcomes. Do you think drafting both Puka and Cup, if one of them falls in ADP, is a viable strategy? If you're talking about best ball, that's fine. If you're talking about redraft, I'm not as into it because it's a little bit unnecessary, but it would depend on where they fall. In most of my BBMs lately, I see him fall at least around after ADP, but I get his ADP has already fallen, and you have the Jack stack here too. Yeah, I mean, I think that his ADP is going to not fall anymore because they literally said yesterday that he's looking likely for week 1, that he's going to be fine for week 1 with Hopkins. So I'm fine drafting him where I got him, which is at that current ADP, like that new ADP. Hey, JJ, focus on playoff weeks correlations in the draft for a tournament style redraft league. I would not worry about it as much in redraft. Redraft is still a 50-50 game in the playoffs. You don't need to reach these like crazy high outcomes in the playoffs in a redraft league. I know you're saying tournament style. Do you mean tournament style is in like a single elimination playoff, or do you mean like there are hundreds of teams like Scott Fishbowl? That's different. Do you play in any keeper leagues? Yes. What's your opinion of keepers on the same team? I'm likely keeping Kyron and Puka. Just that's fine as long as their cost is good. It's fine to flip them too. Hard to answer that without knowing the specifics, But if they're the best values, they're the best values. All right, next round we're looking running back. And there are some right here. None that necessarily correlate with Arizona and Jacksonville. But let's see Tennessee. None that really correlate with Tennessee. So we'll just get kind of the best running backs available. I'm getting a little bit more Austin Eckler. I don't have a ton of him, which is a little frightening. I think he's more like I don't know if the upside's really there. But I have taken him a little bit more in best ball. I've had a really hard time clicking Zeke's name all offseason for obvious reasons. Do you have all the playoff schedules pulled up on your other screen? Yeah, they're always to the right. It's literally been up all offseason. I have a lot of sharps. I'm trying to shift that a little bit. Maybe we go Ty Chandler. I'm cool with that. Do you know off the top of your head what rounds typically have more running backs versus wide receivers available? I don't really know what that means. That's a best ball bro move right there. Yeah, that's just, they literally they're just up all the time. If you walk into my office and my computer's on. Yeah, Algier was another one that I was hoping would slip to the 13th because I want to get another running back, I think. This could be where, I reach a little bit for McLaughlin though too. Because he fits with Cincinnati and Jamar Chase for week 17. League winners from each league will add up all the playoff week score. Week 17 weighted slightly heavier for the tournament. Yeah, it doesn't sound like I would worry about playoff the correlation in the playoff matchups. Like you hold off drafting a running back in round. Okay, so are you saying like where running backs hit or how many running backs are just naturally available? If you're asking where running backs hit and such, there's a chart in the late round draft guide. There's a lot to this. There's a lot of nuance to a discussion like this, and it's going to change from league to league based on ADP and all that kind of stuff and where these guys get drafted. So how many available? I don't know the sheer number of players. I'm assuming that there's going to be more wide receivers available in many of the middle and late rounds. How many I don't really understand how I would answer that. How many available? There's way more wide receivers than running backs in general in fantasy football. All right, we're going to go Jaleel. It fits this build pretty well. Shocker, I get another Jaleel McLaughlin share. Thought about J.K. Dobbins. I got a little bit of Dobbins at his cheaper price. I wish I got more, though. But I'm still a little concerned, obviously, about the injuries and stuff. Yeah, week 12 with wide receivers should be fun here with 4 guys on bye. That's what happens, though, when you stack, obviously, and then just 2 of the other guys just happen to have the same bye. Do you think P. Ryan's getting cut, or does the Jaleel bet not? I mean, it definitely is. It matters from the standpoint that he will look even better with a P. Ryan cut. I think P. Ryan's going to get cut based on economics and such. If he doesn't, though, I still think Jaleel's going to have. Like, I think that we're drafting Jaleel McLaughlin like around his projection, and then there's upside to it. Like things could break his way, or someone can get hurt, all that kind of stuff. Even if he's a smaller guy and he won't be a true bell cow. I miss the days where we get Ray Davis a little bit later too. I think Jaleel, though, I can look at my exposure for Best Ball Mania. We'll do that real quick. Jaleel's my highest rostered. I thought it was Najee. Najee's number 2. Corum, Charbonnet, Chase Brown, Tajay Spears, Ray Davis. Those are my top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 running backs. And then you get into like Tyrone Tracy. I have a lot of Antonio Gibson too. Tyrone Tracy. And then some of the rookies like Marshawn Lloyd, which sucks because he's been hurt. Jonathan Brooks, Jalen Wright. Then Rico Dowdle, Tony Pollard. I actually have 12% CMC just based on getting picks early on. So those are my top exposed running backs. All right, we got 5 more picks. It'd be great to get Ray Davis, man. I saw Hunter Henry's been banged up. Yeah, there goes Ray Davis. I don't know what I'm going to do here. Could go Demarcus Robinson. I don't want to really reach or go with that one. Can get like Whittington later. Probably just take a chance on one of these running backs, like a Bucky. Could go Gibson. Gibson does get Arizona. Let's go Gibson. See what's available in the next round. That's kind of a dead spot. I could have made the argument for Jalen McMillan, Braylon Allen. I went more the Gibson route because I wanted at least a little bit more production. But we could be done at running back with this group of 5. We need a tight end still. I've seen Whittington go early 17th in my last few drafts. Is that as high as I think it is? Yeah, but like a 17th round pick really isn't that much different than like even a 15th rounder. So, I get it. I think that people are being a little bit biased based on what we saw with Puka last year when it comes to Whittington. He was an interesting prospect because he's got like a lot of thickness. Like he played a little running back too in college. So he's kind of an interesting prospect from that. He might be what I wanted Anaya Smith to be, right? But I think that he's gonna be the 4th wide receiver behind Demarcus Robinson still. All right, we can look at I might get Demarcus Robinson if he's there. I could go with one more running back as well, but I don't know if I need to force it that much. We do still need to get another tight end. There's just not a huge difference in my opinion between like Otten and even Likely versus some of the guys we can get later. He's more the Puka backup. No, I don't think I think he would play slot. He played there in college. Like he would play. Sorry, it's confusing because the Rams go inside out with a lot of these guys. They're not just stapled to these one positions. All right, we're gonna go. Demarcus Robinson fits the build more, but I want to go Jalen McMillan because I think we could go for upside a little bit in this area. The Rams use all their guys everywhere. So like my point though is that I think Demarcus Robinson would be that like they're not going to take one of these guys off the field, what Puka or Cup for Whittington is what I meant. Do you use a tool to keep your rosters up to date with your models, or do you do it all hand by hand, week to week? I'm trying to build my own model. I don't understand what you mean by models. Are you talking about like projections? I don't really consider, the projections are kind of model based because I do a lot of regression stuff in it, but they're not as like model driven as, projections aren't as model driven as like my prospect model and stuff. But yeah, I do weekly projections. I just do the weekly projections just to get a baseline and make sure I'm not missing anything glaring. Same with season long, even. Like I don't update my season long projections the way that some people would probably think. I'm not like Mike Clay with my season long projections. Clay is the gold standard. If you guys want to look at like season long, you can just Google his name, Mike Clay projections. You can get the PDF of them because he's like very detail oriented with all of that. I do projections to get an idea of like what kind of target share is available and et cetera, because I don't like drafting off of projections. It's just a way to sort of see, what kind of opportunities someone can create in an offense and what these offenses just generally look like. It's the same deal in a weekly format, just because there's so much variance. There's a lot of variance. McMillan seems like the classic later round rookie smash right now. Yeah, there's outs for him, right? But also he's very good. One of his comps in my model was Amon-Ra St. Brown. I really like Jalen McMillan as a player, as a target. This is one of those lineups where there's like enough correlation that I'm not like gonna force it either. But I think this could be a 9 wide receiver build, even with the earlier round wide receivers. Because I'm only going to get one more tight end. I think this running back room is like fine enough, Is there any reason to avoid getting round 1 Tyreek, round 3 Achane, round 4 Waddle on an 8-team PPR redraft league? Yeah, stacking doesn't matter as much. I mean, is there any reason to not? Yeah, the reason to not is that it's more of a floor thing than necessarily a ceiling thing, and there's also a lot of sorry, it's more of it's a high variance outcome, because if Tua goes down, your team's screwed. But it also doesn't matter that much because it's an 8 team league, and it's easy to make up for mistakes there. After all the Vikings news, I feel like I'd take Brees Bijan and AJ Brown ahead of him. Thoughts? Ahead of Justin Jefferson. Um, I'm still taking Jefferson over those guys in best ball. I think that you can make the argument for the running backs. I have the running backs ahead of them in a managed season long league. I should have been paying attention because I'm on the clock. Um, Tough scenes. I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm just putting Whittington up there in case I hate everything that's here. We're really looking at wide receiver. Let's just go Whittington and get the bring back. So someone said early 17. I just got him in the late 16 with Whittington. But I don't see any difference in this range, like 16, 17, 18. Like you said, this round feels so dead. Exactly. It's like this is kind of the downside of drafting later in the season is everyone's sharper because we all have more information. Like I'm just gonna throw a dart, maybe just get a Tyler Boyd to stack with the rest of this Jacksonville, Tennessee thing. Let's do that. I love me some Tyler Boyd. Yeah, exactly. I got Tyler Boyd. We need a tight end. We're gonna be throwing. I should have probably gotten Parkinson instead of Whittington. We'll put him at the top. Gesicki, Dulcich. Putting a little bit of too much faith in Trey McBride potentially here. Tight end sucks though. Yeah, Vidal and Tracy at the turn. I just wasn't looking at running back there. I did last night. I did two BBMs and I got Kamani Vidal in both because I think there's a chance we start to see his ADP rise a little bit back to where it kind of was. I haven't gotten like any Hayden Hurst. No. We kind of know, you know, who he is, what he's going to do, what he's all about. I'd rather take a shot on a more of an upside play in a better passing offense or a more intriguing upside or passing offense. We'll see what kind of tight end goes here. Van Jefferson. We got a Van Jefferson sighting. I'm assuming there's a pit. Where is there? This isn't even a Pittsburgh stack. You got Roman Wilson and Van Jefferson though, without Russ or Justin Fields. I think you guys lost me for a sec. Oh, and Najee. You're right. Oh wait, no, Najee's on a different team, right? Yeah. Yeah, Najee's one over. What's up, Bindles? You're catching the tail end. All right, there goes Parkinson. Still got two guys that we'd be okay with. As our tight end too. Do you have a favorite stack this late in BBM? Yeah, I mean you can go Pittsburgh, you can go Denver's an easy one. That's usually my go-to. How did Theo Johnson do in the experimental tight end model? I feel like the tight end model is less experimental now, especially after last year. Because it did really well. He was good. He was okay. I think that this tight end class just isn't that great. All right, we're going to go Gesicki, I think, to get Cincinnati. Another Cincinnati piece. Let me just make sure their buys are different. Yeah, this team feels all right. Thoughts on Yoshivas versus Burton? I think Burton is still the better pick long term. He has more big playability. I think Yoshivas might be a decent. I mean, he's fine. I just think my general stance, if I want to dumb this down with Yoshivas versus Burton, is Yoshi is a wideout for Princeton who didn't do a lot year one, right? And we know year one production correlates to future season production, right? He was fine enough as a prospect, but there's a reason we don't see many Ivy League wide receivers do much in the NFL. I'm going to go back to this league. That was number 128 for Best Ball Mania. What are we going to rate this? I had a 5 out of 10 one last night. This might be an 8 out of 10. Let me recap really quick, and I'll get back to the Cincinnati thing. I ended up getting Kyler and Trevor Lawrence at quarterback. Kyron, Tony Pollard, that brings it back with both of those quarterbacks. Ty Chandler, Jaleel McLaughlin, and Antonio Gibson. Jamar Chase, Chris Olave, Xavier Worthy, Brian Thomas, DeAndre Hopkins, Gabe Davis, Jalen McMillan, Jordan Whittington, and Tyler Boyd. And then at tight end, we have Trey McBride and Mike Gesicki. I like this team. I think it came together. Let me know what you guys think out of 10. But the Cincinnati thing, man, I mean, you have Jermaine Burton was a really good prospect from one of the best programs in the country. He dropped in the draft because of between the ears stuff more than anything. So like, it's one of those things where like, I'm going to bet on talent, and I'm definitely going to bet on talent in the later rounds. And Burton has the talent edge. Like at the end of the day, I know that Yoshivas might have, sort of the in to see that Tyler Boyd role, and there might be an easier role for him to play, but there's still a lot of upside with Burton, man. If something happens to like a Chase or a T Higgins, I mean, he's a big play threat. So I do think that Yoshi's going to see the field before him, and it might be a slow burn. Like we might not see Burton until later in the year, like do something significant, but that's my general stance. Like a guy like Yoshi generally does not give us like production that we're going to regret missing out on. Best ball is a little bit different because we need all the production we can get. But like, especially in like a managed season long league, the odds that he ends up being like even a wide receiver 3 are very low based on where he's coming from, what he was as a prospect, and what he did in year one. That's it. If it's a deep league, it's different. I'd probably target him more. If it's a shallow league, I would not even worry about it. Cool. That was fun. A lot of people are saying more 8 out of 10. You got a 7.5. You got an 8.2. I'm probably going to mark it as an 8, but it was solid overall. Appreciate all of you guys for tuning in. Oh, Bindle says, what is your biggest takeaway from diving deeper into the best ball space that you are going to take into the season? I don't know about taking into the season, but taking into next season is just sort of like understanding taking zeros and stuff and being smart about that. It's probably the big thing. But yeah, that's it for the stream. I'm going to go edit my podcast. It's dropping tomorrow on risers and fallers, guys who have risen and fallen in my rankings over the last couple of months. Fun episode that I do every year. Thanks everyone for tuning in. As usual, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. You like this video, you comment on it after the fact and after it's live. Trying to grow this thing, as you guys know, and I really, really appreciate all the support. The more support you guys show and the more this channel grows, the more I'm going to like focus on the channel and doing more with the channel and all that good stuff. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'll talk to you hopefully tomorrow or Wednesday.